story time. My name is Miss Lisa and I'm going to read you some stories today. Our theme for this week is camping, and camping starts with the letter C. Okay, I'm in my reading spot and ready to go. Are you in your reading spot? Great, then let's get reading. Our first book is called Digger and Daisy Go Camping. It was written by Judy Young and illustrated by Dana Sullivan. Well, it sure looks like they're having fun roasting marshmallows and other treats. I wonder what other fun things they're going to do while they're camping. Let's read on and find out. Digger and Daisy Go Camping. It's summer. Daisy gets her backpack. She gets her sleeping bag too. Let's go camping, says Daisy. But Digger is worried. There might be bears. Don't worry, says Daisy. It will be fun. Digger and Daisy walk down the path. There is a noise. Digger hears it. He looks all around. He is worried. I hear a bear, says Digger. No, says Daisy. Bears growl. It is just a bird. It is singing. Can we sing too, says Digger. Yes, says Daisy. It is fun to sing while you hike. Digger and Daisy sing while they hike. Soon they come to a lake. There is a noise. Digger hears it. He looks all around. He is worried. I hear a bear, says Digger. No, says Daisy. Bears growl. It is just a fish. It is jumping in the lake. Can we jump in the lake too? Says Digger. Yes, says Daisy. It is fun to jump in a lake. Digger and Daisy jump in the lake. Soon it is time to come out, but Digger is cold. We will make a fire, says Daisy. It will warm us up. Daisy looks for sticks. Digger looks for sticks too. There is a noise. Digger hears it. He looks all around. He is worried. I hear a bear, says Digger. No, says Daisy. Bears growl. It is just a squirrel. It is finding nuts. Can we find nuts too? Says Digger. Yes, says Daisy. Nuts are good to eat. Digger and Daisy find nuts. They eat them by the fire. They eat hot dogs too, and marshmallows. It will be dark soon, says Daisy. We need to put up the tent. Digger helps Daisy. Digger and Daisy get into their sleeping bags. There is a noise. Digger hears it. He looks all around. He is worried. I hear a bear, says Digger. No, says Daisy. Bears growl. That is just the wind. Go to sleep, Digger. Daisy closes her eyes. Soon she is sound asleep, but Digger is not. Digger hears the wind. I am not worried, thinks Digger. That is not a bear. Digger hears a fish jump. I am not worried, thinks Digger. That is not a bear. Digger hears an owl hoot. I am not worried, thinks Digger. That is not a bear. Digger closes his eyes. Soon he is sound asleep. Now there is another noise. Digger does not hear it, but Daisy does. She opens her eyes. It is dark. She grabs her flashlight. Daisy looks all around. She is worried. Digger, wake up! I hear a bear, says Daisy. When Digger wakes up, the noise stops. Go back to sleep, says Digger. Bears growl. That was just me snoring. Do you like to go camping? I do too. Digger and Daisy did a lot on their camping trip. They went hiking, swimming. They even thought they heard a bear. And they set up a nice little campsite. Let's look at this different campsite. Here I have two pictures of the same campsite, except one looks a little bit different than the other. Look very carefully. There are three things that are different. Can you spot them all? Let's see if you found them. First, the birds are missing from this picture. Second, there are flowers added to the cactus plant. And third, the fire is missing. If you found them all, great job. You have a fantastic eye. Our next book is called Libby Wimbley, Worm Wrangler. It was written by Amy Cobb and illustrated by Alexandria Neonakis. Ooh, she sure has a full bucket of worms here. Do you know what they are for? Well, let's read on and see if you are right. This book, as you can see here in the front, it has a table of contents. This is a beginner's chapter book. See here, it has 5 different chapters, and the titles help to give us an idea of what we are going to read about. So chapter 1 is camping fun. Chapter 2 is worm hunt. Chapter 3 is early worms. Chapter 4 is too tired. And chapter 5 is a new home. Well, let's read on and see what happens in this story. Chapter 1, Camping Fun. Here we are, Libby Wimbley shouted. Elk Hollow Lake. Libby's family was going camping. She could hardly wait for the fun to begin. Let's go hiking, Libby said, or maybe swimming in the lake. Libby's little brother Stuart grabbed some marshmallows. Let's make s'mores, he said. Slow down, you two, Mom smiled. That's right, Dad said. First, let's set up our tent. After everyone helped with the tent, Libby asked, Now can we go to the lake, please? Sure, Mom said. There was so much to do there. They hiked, they swam, and they skipped rocks on the water. Soon it was almost dark. We'd better head back to our campsite, Mom said. Let's tell stories around the campfire, Libby said. Stuart smiled. Don't forget the s'mores. When the s'mores were eaten and the last story told, Mom said it's time for bed. All ready? Libby asked. Dad nodded. Tomorrow we're going fishing. The early bird catches the worm, you know. That night, Libby felt all snuggly in her sleeping bag, but she couldn't sleep. Instead, Libby thought of a surprise for her family. Chapter 2, Worm Hunt. The next morning, Libby heard birds singing. Those must be the early birds, she whispered to herself. Libby looked around the tent. Dad, Mom, and Stuart were all asleep. But Libby didn't want to sleep. She wanted to be an early bird, too. Libby unzipped her sleeping bag. She squeezed through the tent flap. Then she yawned and stretched in the sunlight that peeked over the trees. Libby still wanted to surprise everyone. She had to hurry. If I were a worm, where would I be? Libby asked. She grabbed a bucket and looked all around the tent. No worms there. Libby looked by the picnic table. No worms there either. Here, worms, Libby called, just like she did the chickens at home on the farm. But the worms didn't come. Then Libby remembered something. Worms liked to hide under things where the soil was moist. Libby rolled over a rock. A worm! She checked under some leaves. 3 worms. Soon, lots of wiggly worms filled Libby's bucket. Chapter 3, Early Worms. Libby, what are you doing? Dad called. Libby turned around. Dad, Mom, and Stuart stood outside the tent. Surprise! Libby said. She held up her bucket. Mom looked inside. Worms? Not just any worms, Libby said. These are early worms. I must be dreaming, Stuart yawned. I've never heard of early worms before. Libby laughed. Dad said the early bird catches the worm, but these worms are up early too, so they must be early worms. Get it? I think so, Stuart said, rubbing his eyes. Are those worms for our fishing trip later today? Dad asked. Libby nodded. I wanted to surprise everyone. Well, you sure did, Mom said. Libby smiled. Surprising her family was fun. Can we go fishing now? Libby asked. Not yet, Dad shook his head. We have a surprise, too. Mom held up a box. How about pancakes for breakfast? Yay! Libby and Stuart said at the same time. After breakfast, they'd still have all day for fishing. Libby thought she should get up this early every morning. Chapter 4. Too Tired. When the breakfast dishes were washed and put away, Dad asked, Who's ready for fishing? Me, Libby said. Me too, Stuart chimed in. I've got the fishing poles, Mom said. Stuart helped Mom with the poles. Dad grabbed the tackle box. And Libby carried the worms. They were all ready to hike down to the lake. When they got there, Mom said, Hand me a worm, Libby. I'll bait your hook. Libby looked at the hook. She looked at the worms. Then she looked back at the hook again. I know, Libby said. Let's use one of these worms instead. She opened the tackle box and pulled out a fake worm. Okay, Mom said. Libby cast her line into the lake. Then she leaned back against a tree and closed her eyes. She was ready for a nap. Hey, Libby, you're getting a nibble, Stuart said. Libby opened her eyes and reeled her fishing pole, but it was too late. That fish got away, Mom said. Libby yawned. Looks like our early girl is tired, Dad teased. Dad was right. Libby was too tired for fishing. Chapter 5. A New Home. That afternoon, the camping trip was over. Libby and her family headed back to their farm. When they got there, Libby pulled out a bucket. Look, she said, I brought the early worms home with us. What are you going to do with them? Dad asked. Libby wasn't sure yet. You could keep them in your room, Stuart said. No, Mom said. No worms in the house. Libby laughed, but her room really wasn't a good home for worms anyway. So where was a good home for them? Then Libby thought of something Mr. Keller, her science teacher, had said. I know the perfect spot, the garden, Libby said. The garden? Stuart asked. Libby nodded. Mr. Keller said in class that earthworms are the farmer's friend, she said. When they make tunnels through the dirt, it helps the soil. Let's go, Stuart said. Everyone headed to the garden. They watched as the last worm wriggled away. I guess the early bird didn't get these worms, huh? Said Dad. Nope, Libby laughed, but these early worms got a new home. What another great book, boys and girls. Well, I sure had fun reading with you today, and I hope you did too. I hope to see you again next week. Don't forget to stop by the library to pick up your storytime craft. Happy reading! Bye!